Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. This is a continuing series that gives me great thrill and joy and all kinds of wonderful words to be working in conjunction with the Garden State Film Festival, a leading premier indie film festival. And part of my energy as an indie self-published author is I love the word indie and they are such a premier thing. And I've been hanging around with them almost 12 years, almost since their beginnings way back with Diane and now Lauren. It is, and every once in a while, something to me, something so special comes along, like Patrick Hogan and your journey and the things you've done. And we're going to talk about your movie Blindsided shortly, which is fascinating on a whole bunch of different levels. And your accomplishments, besides being born on the island of Guam, which is a romantic, wonderful place for me, and you having gone to Northwestern, a Big Ten school like Rutgers, and then getting your MFA from USC, another Big Ten school. So there's lots of elements of commonality and so forth and so on. But you've gotten in addition to all your film stuff, you are a very accomplished sound editor and working on, I think, Cobra Kai and other stuff. You can talk more about that. And you've won 10, you've gotten 10 Emmy nominations for sound editing. Very, I mean, like, wow, impressive. So this is really special, and thank you for kind of hanging out with me here, Patrick. And you can, do a little background stuff, take it away, and then we'll jump in to your world and Blindsided, etc.
Yeah, thank you, Kelvin. I'm excited to be here, and I love the Garden State Film Festival. My wife is actually born in New Jersey, so
Kidding.
we have a Guam, New Jersey.
Wow.
Yeah, she was born Hopewell, just outside of Princeton, and so we've spent quite a bit of time in New Jersey as well. So that's the other, home state. So, and just, I mean, any film festival that supports independent filmmaking, in my opinion, is just amazing. Because it's not easy to do. It's not easy at all. It's hard to make the films. It's hard to get people interested in the films, and it's sure hard to run festivals and combine those two worlds in a successful way. And so the fact that Garden State is so successful is a testament to the whole the board of directors and the staff and the director and everybody there, down to the volunteers. So very excited to talk to you about whatever you want to talk about. I mean, this is great. Filmmakers love nothing more than to talk filmmaking and their own films and their own journey as well. So, looking forward to it. I
Yeah.
mean, part of when I hear people say you've had quite a journey, it reminds me that, I'm not a youngster anymore. I've been doing this for
Oh,
a while, but I love it. And even if I'm the oldest person at the festival, it doesn't matter to me. I do it because I love it, not for any other reason than the love of
right.
storytelling and the craft of filmmaking. So
Right.
thank you.
Well, I don't want to disillusion you. You won't be the oldest person. I will.
Yeah, okay, very good.
I will be, as I ascended the throne of octogenarian a few months ago. Uh,
Congrats.
uh, so I'll be the oldest. It's funny. I grew up my whole life. I was never the oldest, and suddenly you wake up one day and you look in the mirror and you say, "I'm the oldest." It kind of hits you when you least expect it. It's kind of like an old TV show. Uh, One of the taglines from an old TV show, when you least expect it, boom, on candid camera, something like that.
Yeah.
Yep, yep,
Mhm.
yep. So, anyway, um, so we can drift around and we will drift around because, like I said, your world is a wonderful world. And film is a wonderful world, and the whole I've been so involved with indies, both as an author, self-published, and in your world and the stuff I've done, it just kind of blows me away when I see the quality and the amazing work coming out, and seeing some of these films and getting to meet so many of you all. It really does blow me away. And in New Jersey, I know about Hopewell too, because I used to, when I was a pharmacist, I worked in Princeton on Nassau Street. I had a couple of year gig there. It's an interesting part of the world. But New Jersey, before you even jump in, it's coming up in the world to be a major film production place,
Yes. It
and
definitely is.
actually
They've done a lot of good work there.
a lot of good work. And we had a governor who was very pro uh, film industry and all all the tax incentives and everything he's done, Governor Murphy, which I have so much respect for him. Netflix just bopped down $1 billion to build a studio 10 miles away from Asbury Park.
Oh,
That's
wow. I'd
open.
not heard that. That's great.
Yeah, that's going to open up $1 billion. That's going to open up um, in less than a year now. And I don't know, I think Iron Gate just plucked down another billion for Hudson County, and somebody else plucked down another billion for South Jersey. So um, we're becoming a major production place, and New York's expensive, and New Jersey's cheaper and better. So we're taking a lot of that New York stuff, and people are coming here. I know Spielberg was here a couple times recently doing stuff, and hey, it's a changing world. So um, we're going to talk about Blindsided. What inspired you um, to make this film, and what specially suited you in making this film? Because your world is sound editing.
Yeah. So Blindsided is a sci-fi horror about a blind school teacher who wakes up in the middle of the night when a giant alien spaceship crash lands outside her apartment building, and a big, giant, scary monster is unleashed and goes on a rampage. And what's unique about the film is that the whole story is told from the point of view of this blind character, which is not to say that it's a radio play. It's a very visual film, but the camera tracks on her face and follows her. So this gets to experience everything through her in the same way that she does, which is to say, sound is doing all the heavy lifting, and we're seeing her react to what's going on, which she only understands from hearing it. So the idea came from the fact that I'm a filmmaker. I've made one feature, many, many short films, written a ton of screenplays, had many of them in development, what they call development hell, where they almost get made, then they don't get made, then they almost get made, and they don't get made, which is why I'm back kind of making my own films again, so that no one can tell me no, except myself, and I don't tell myself no, so I keep making them. So I wanted to do one film. Most of my films don't come from my background as a sound editor. Most of them just come from whatever thoughts come into my head. You know how it is. A thought pops in your head and you're
Sure.
like, "Oh, that's interesting. Let's explore that and see where that leads." But in this particular case, I wanted to do one short film that really leaned into my ability to leverage sound as a storyteller, because not only do I make films, but I've worked on thousands of hours of episodic television and movies as a sound editor. And I've learned over all that time how sound can really help tell a story, because constantly I'll have a producer or director say, I really wish we could do this. And then I come up with a way for sound to help do what they want to do. No matter what size budget you have, there still comes a point where you don't have any more money. And so you have to get creative. And that's where sound can really come into play. So I thought, let's do something with sound. And the idea that came into my head was this idea of taking a very kind of a trope of the sci-fi horror world. I love sci-fi horror stuff. I mean, Aliens, those movies, late 70s or 80s, they were, my favorite movies. Um, so I took a kind of common story, but thought, let's tell it in a unique, interesting way that maybe I'm the only person, maybe not the only one, but I'm uniquely situated to tell this because I'm both a filmmaker and, a very accomplished sound editor and know how to do it, and maximize what sound can do. So I came up with this idea of having the character be blind. But what's great is once I came up with the idea, it became less about me wanting to show off what I can do and me getting excited about what that possibility entails. Because then the producer of the film, who's my wife and producing partner, Anna, she said, well, if the character's blind, let's go out and find a low vision actress to play the role. Let's not once again just pick an actor uh,
Wow.
and have them pretend. Let's open this up. And then I thought, well, and the other roles are voice roles because we're always on her face. So the other people in the film, we don't see them, we just hear them. I thought, well, then also, why not the voice actors be low vision actors? So we got through Disability Belongs, we got introduced to a casting director, Danielle, who works a lot in diversity, inclusion, and casting. And we said we want to put out a call, but only low vision actors audition. And so they're all low vision. And then it became about not only a cool, unique way for the audience to see this, but also a cool, unique way to allow actors who maybe don't necessarily get considered for these roles to get a chance to play these roles. It's not a big film, it's a small short film, but I think maybe people will see this and maybe it'll inspire other people to think outside the box and think, maybe, we can think different ways about different people and not, kind of, pigeonhole people into certain categories of what they can and can't do.
Wow. Unique. I mean, completely unique, and even the cast. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, was there special equipment and techniques used in doing this?
Yeah. Yeah, there were all kinds of um so one thing was the camera's on her face the whole time. So we use something, it's been used in movies frequently, but usually for much shorter shots. It's called a snorri cam. And it's a rig that the actor actually wears. It was
Wow.
used in Requiem for a Dream. There's some other, usually it's I think it was used in the name of some of them, but it's usually used to have this kind of disorienting, like people are freaking out or they're on drugs because your head stays in the same position in the frame because you're wearing the camera. So wherever you turn, the camera stays on your face, but the background moves, not you.
Right. Right.
Um,
Wow.
and so I thought that might be a great way of doing this because I wanted the camera to stay tight on her face and restrict what the audience could see the same way she's restricted in what she can see. And it was tough because it's a so the total film is just over 7 minutes, and more than half of it, 4 minutes of the film, is a single continuous shot of her wearing the camera. So not only did we have to practice with the actress and we had to kind of build the rig and figure out how we were going to make it work. And there are all kinds of considerations you don't think about until you're doing something like this. And the camera's moving 360 degrees, right? As she turns around, the camera's seeing all directions. So, we couldn't have a giant crew behind sometimes you have a shot and there's a camera pointing, and there might be 100 people behind that camera. Well, we never had 100 people because we didn't have that budget. But we couldn't do that. So we had to film on a sound stage and have everybody be outside the stage, except we did need people to move furniture and do things. So we actually had people hiding on the set that we had to coordinate and call out command stuff. So it becomes a lot more complicated um, than you initially plan. And we had to use small lenses and small cameras because of the weight, because she is carrying it, and we didn't want it to get too heavy and too bulky. So but it was a fun,
Yeah.
it was. I wanted it was not only a fun and unique for the audience, but it was fun and unique for the crew to shoot this because we all were doing something kind of outside the box and different from what we normally do.
Yeah. Really outside the box. Um, I was kind of reading some of your background. If you could just talk briefly about both, as a filmmaker and then some of the sound work you've done. I mentioned, 10 Emmy nominations, but you did something, I don't know if it came out of school or that an airline bought. Uh, um,
Yeah.
it-
Yeah, so I've always I so I first I got into writing. So when I was a little kid, I started writing short stories. My mom got mad one time in the third grade. I was accused of plagiarism. They said a third grader couldn't write this story, and they were going to give me an F on the assignment. My mom got really upset, so she marched me down there and sat me down and said, "Tell him what to write. He's going to write a story right now while you watch him." And so I had to like write a story under observation to prove
Wow.
that I could write. So I've always enjoyed writing. But then as I became a teenager, I really got into films. I mean, that, back then for $5, I could go to a double feature and also have a hot dog and a Coke and spend the afternoon watching movies. And so those loves melded together, the writing and the creative, and I dabbled in acting for a while, realized I'm not very good at that. But all those things kind of led me to eventually um, take the plunge and go to USC Film School. And everybody enters USC Film School thinking they're going to be the next Spielberg, Lucas, Coppola, take your pick. When I was there, everybody wanted to be the next John Singleton. There was, but you also, not everybody can do that. There's only so many, but there's 100 roles on a film, right? And they all need good, talented people. So USC was really good at forcing everyone to dabble in all the other
Right.
elements of post production and post production. And so I'd worked at a radio station for a while in high school, so I kind of had a base in that. And it just turns out, as I was in film school, I was really, really good at sound. So I did my thesis film called The Business Card. And at that point, airlines were beginning to have those hard drives on the plane with a menu of films to watch, and they needed content for that because this was before all the TV stations allowed them to have their things, and every movie chain, every movie studio, so they reached out to USC and said, "Do you have student films that we could buy to put
Wow.
on our things?" So it was Virgin Atlantic, and they sent them a bunch of films, and mine was the first one picked.
Wow.
So that's my little claim to fame as a student
Great.
filmmaker, first one ever. I'd like to think because it was a superior film, maybe because it was one of the few PG rated films, that I made a very happy rom-com. A lot of people make very dark, nasty, violent films, but mine was very lighthearted. I think it was really good. It was really fun. Um, and then out of film school, I had an agent and I was trying to get my scripts made, and I actually I wrote and directed an indie feature film. But at the same time, between those, you got to pay the bills. And by the time I graduated from USC, I already had paid offers to do sound work on films while I was still in film school. And I was like, hey, this is pretty good. And so within a year of graduation, I joined the union and was getting, pension and health benefits and all the things that as a 20 something seems like it'll never happen, right? And so yeah, Union Strong 28 years now.
Wow.
But I got into sound, and then I pretty quickly went from assistant to editor. And then after 5 years of union sound work, there was a show that needed someone to supervise it who also could do some of the editing on it. And because I had a film school background, this kind of well-rounded knowledge of filmmaking that I'd gotten from that, I think it kind of moved me faster through the process because when a producer or director would talk to me, they don't often know how to talk to a sound person, but they know how to talk to another filmmaker. So they can talk in filmmaker speak,
Uh-huh,
and I
uh-huh.
can translate that into actionable items we can do in sound. So I think that helped me in my supervising sound career. And so I started on a show called Nip Tuck, and then The Closer and Vampire Diaries, and I'm skipping the Dallas reboot. I got to work with Larry Hagman in his last year of life, and he was delightful to work with. He was such a nice guy. Um, got to work with a lot of really great people, and it just got to work on a lot of shows that got Emmy nominations. And I guess I'm approaching. I'm pretty soon. I'll be the Susan Lucci, I guess, of sound editors because I'm 0 for 10. But someday maybe.
Of course.
I've already said, I said if I win one, I'm going to consider it a lifetime achievement award and just revel in it like it is. But I've been really lucky to work with good people and do good sound projects. And then eventually I decided to just start making my own films again, independently. And the latest is Blindsided, which is on the festival circuit now.
It's great. It's great. Which kind of leads me into so what's next for the film? I just think it's by the way, with all my background and the stuff I was telling you about, with all this UFO and all this other stuff that's been floating around uh,
Hmm.
and I've been talking to some people about doing some interviews, and it's really relevant because we don't know nothing, and I know the
Yeah.
government is we don't know nothing, and the government is releasing not enough, but some stuff is getting released.
We were, I was just joking with a friend. I said, politics in our country are so strange and screwed up right now that the government released stuff that said, yeah, we know about UFOs, and no one's paid any attention because of all the other chaos we
Correct,
have going on.
correct. I mean, that to me would be a headline.
Normally you think people would be like, whoa, wait, you're acknowledging it,
Yeah,
and everybody's like too busy with all the other chaos that's going on.
correct.
Um,
And you're really right about that. I mean,
yeah.
that's potent stuff. And it's buried, on page, 32 on the bottom
I've
right-hand corner.
I've always loved sci-fi. I don't know the answers. I know that with the size of our universe, it would be more surprising to be alone in it than not. Just math tells me that there's something. It may not look the way we expect it to look because it would be beyond our comprehension of how other life would form, but it's hard to believe there isn't other, uh,
Correct.
but for Blindsided, so usually when I make my short films, they're just short films. Like if it's a feature idea, it's a feature. If it's a short film, it's a short film. But Blindside is one, as soon as I came up with the idea, I was like, oh, I know exactly where this is going. So there's a full feature outline in
So this is a
place.
proof of concept kind of thing.
I mean, I wrote the script just as by itself, but once I finished it, I was like, this could be the first 10 minutes of a much bigger film because it starts very small in her apartment, but then it can expand. Obviously, I don't want to give away any plot,
Sure, sure.
but there's things going on in the short film that you don't that are not what they seem that you wouldn't know unless we ever get to make. Like the short film stands alone, but there are some little Easter eggs in it that would lead us into the bigger film. So right now we're on the festival circuit. We're only about 8, 9 months in. We have our international premiere next month at a really big film festival in South America. We're getting to go to New Jersey. We have a couple other things lined up over the summer, but I'm having some opportunities maybe to try to pitch it to some people. If not, we'll start looking into, horror always is a great
Yeah.
uh, sell to investors because at the very, very low budget level, uh, horror films are more likely to make back their money if you're thinking of it from an investment side than just about anything. And everybody loves monster movies, but the problem is usually monster movies are much more expensive
Yes.
than your low budget slasher style horror movies. And what I've done is I've kind of solved that, and I have a big budget giant monster movie that can be made for like the smaller slasher
Yeah.
budget. So I'm hoping all the success and the audience reaction to Blindsided combined with the our track record combined with we have something that might actually be of interest from a business standpoint, which filmmakers hate to think of we hate to ever think about the business side of things. I just want to tell the story, but sometimes you have to think like a business person and think, does it make sense from the business side? Because you can make films without any money but if you want to make a certain level of film, you need people with money and you know most people don't end up with lots of money because they give it all away. They're very smart and shrewd. So I think we have something here that's worth exploring, which we're hoping to do. That being said, I have two other feature projects that I'm developing simultaneously because you never know
Sure.
uh, what's going to happen. One's a drama and one's a sci-fi romance action film. So I have kind of three different things that I'm trying to do next, but I would love, 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 love to see Blindsided once its festival run is done, take the next step.
Yeah. As I was digesting all of this before we hopped on this, what a fascinating premise. And we're so used to Godzilla, ripping up a town, a city, and but this is so much more intimate. It's funny.
Yeah.
I interviewed a woman a few years ago who was camping out on Mount Shasta,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
which is
Not far from me.
yep. She was camping out. Her name is Ray Dove, She was camping out, and I always thought about that. I got enough stuff on my plate to write books. But she was camping out in the tent on Mount Shasta, and some alien took her by the hand and took her aboard a ship, and she drew pictures, and yeah,
Wow.
and she's as nice and sweet and down to earth as they come. But she was taken, and apparently that must be a lot of energy there on Mount Shasta because I think it's kind of known for things like that. Anyway, I interviewed her a few years ago when I was beginning this channel, and that always resonated with me because there's a story there. Just camping out, and somebody takes her by the hand, and we're always, we're used to Michael Rennie, and the day the Earth stood still kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
here's a woman who's just camping out, and they take her by the hand and take her aboard their ship, and maybe they had tea and crumpets. I don't know. Uh, um, but interesting. But you talk about sci-fi. So the other night, I'm an old movie guy, and I watch AMC, constantly, and they had this movie Forbidden Planet on. Are you familiar with that?
I mean, I haven't watched it in
Okay.
40
Uh,
years, but
So,
yeah.
and what killed me, it was on at 2 in the morning, which means I have to stay up to 3:30 to watch this thing, which I did. Remarkable. This is sci-fi in 1952, something like that. Leslie Nielsen. But somebody should, when I'm talking to you about it, we don't, what's present there is AI all over the place because they're on this planet called Altair, and the planet, way before this scene took place, it was inhabited by these people who their minds were so out there, AI minds were so out there. And so they developed all this theory, and they actually had somebody, one of the American rocket guys, sits down, he tries to elevate his brain with this AI thing so that he could think like this race that's no longer here. But the special effects were mind-boggling. You actually feel you're on that planet. Just thought the whole thing was extraordinary, and the story is so contemporary because they're messing around with AI, in
Yeah.
1952. Anyway,
There's a lot of that coming back around now.
yeah, yeah. So and so there's I too love sci-fi, and we're living sci-fi today, uh, kind of. So just to go off topic, I like to ask some Calvin questions. Uh, when I fess up, some of it came from Barbara Walters. So be it. I marvel at her truly. Patrick, uh, I'm not doing This Is Your Life with Ralph Edwards. You're laughing. Thank God somebody knows what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Thank goodness. Excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
Trying to think of so I've been asked, I don't know if I was asked this before. I thought, and I have an answer because I always thought it'd be fascinating to sit down and talk with him. I'm trying to decide if there's a new, like if in the last 10 years I've evolved, but I'll go just to avoid me going, so the answer I had was my favorite book series of all time is Lord of the Rings. I read it when I was 11. It completely changed my world. It was the depth of world building was amazing. But also his prose was just so beautiful. Like everybody talks about the elves and the orcs but his language, which you don't get in the movies and stuff, was just so evocative and so I mean, he was a very, very smart individual. And and he was in the trenches in World War One, probably one of the highest, fatality rates, infantry in World War One, in Europe. So he lived a life and then his academics, and he was hanging out with I'm blanking of the ink, I'm blanking of the name of the club with C.S. Lewis and I'm blanking right now on the name of their club, but I thought sitting and talking with him for a day and not just about the world building and how he came up with what he came up with, but just his stories of life and how what he experienced in war shaped his fantasy stories. Because one of the reasons I love sci-fi and fantasy is it's how great it is at being allegorical. And there are things that we can talk about that might even be taboo if it's a contemporary drama, but we can discuss it in sci-fi and fantasy. I mean, I always point to our first interracial kiss on screen in TV in America was Star Trek because it couldn't
Right.
happen.
That's
They would
right.
not,
That's
no
right.
one, the censors would not have allowed that to happen
Yeah. Yeah.
in a sitcom set in New York. But on a spaceship, on the other side of the
Yeah.
galaxy, you could do it. So he's always my answer. I
Yeah.
feel like
That's a
there'd be
great
a
answer.
lot of other people I'd love to talk to, but if I can't talk to any family members who are gone, then
Okay.
he would be, I think, a fascinating
Great
dude, and I
answer.
think I'd learn a lot
Yep.
as
Great
well.
answer. Really great answer. By the way, that club you were talking about, was that the Algonquin in New York? That where they all used to hang out?
No, there
And
was
then Tallulah
at
Bankhead used to hang out there. And
Cambridge, where when he was a student, it was called. There
oh,
was a literary society,
okay.
and like most of the members ended up being some of the great, mid 19th century English fiction authors.
Okay.
It's where he met C.S. Lewis, and
Right.
I'm
'Cause
blanking on the name, but
there were a bunch of folks who used to hang out at the Algonquin, actors, writers. I know Tallulah Bankhead was one of them.
yeah.
Uh, by the way, she was in this movie that I absolutely love, which doesn't get enough, Lifeboat. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Not
Uh,
familiar with that one.
the whole thing, Hume Cronin was in it. The
Oh
whole
wow.
thing is their boat is sunk by a German. Um, their ship is sunk, and there's about 8 or 9 survivors, and they're in a lifeboat in the middle of the Atlantic somewhere.
Oh,
And
interesting. I wonder if it's the same. So I was in a play when I back when my youth, when I was like thinking of an actor, when I was 11 or 12. I was in a play called The Raft of the Medusa, which is about 13 British kids
yeah,
in a lifeboat after their British ship, gets sunk by the a German U-boat.
similar, very, very similar.
Maybe based on similar true stories,
Yeah,
probably.
similar, and it was a remarkable piece of work because the whole thing, they're in a lifeboat, and eventually a German ship is sunk, and they rescue a German soldier, Walter Slezak, and you have William Bendix, Hume Cronin, and they're all diverse backgrounds, and I think in the movie she was in it. You just sit and you're just glued. It's such I forgot it might have been, I don't know if it was Hitchcock. I don't remember. But it's just such a powerful piece, and I just never. It's funny the movie never kind of surfaces on AMC, and I haven't seen it in a million years. But anyway, a couple of more questions about Blindsided. It puts us in the POV of a blind protagonist. The woman. It's a way for you to convey fear to an audience. It's so unique and so different without sight. You're creating fear without sight. Talk about that. Uh,
Well, I mean, I think horror film has always kind of, more than any other genre of film, has leaned into sound because we're such a visually based creature, they talk about how, for a dog their superpower is their smell, right? They can smell way better. But humans, it's vision. Like our range of vision is actually kind of almost unmatched. Other species have specific things in their vision, but ours is really strong. So we use vision so much. So when you take that away, you're already kind of putting us in a fearful, discombobulated state because we rely on it so heavily. When I see someone who's low vision on the street walking, I get nervous watching them because I'm thinking they can't see. How can they function? Because I rely on my sight for everything. And we don't realize that if you lose it, everything else kind of adapts. And they're hearing things and feeling things on their skin and smelling things and things that we ignore. So I think sound is always great at scaring us because if you can't see it, and also, kind of like when you read a book, sometimes our imagination will scare the crap out of us much more than any actual visual can. So if you just give all you're hearing what the monster sounds like. Now your imagination has to fill in what would something look like that makes that sound. So we worked really hard on making the monster sound very scary and very not human and very not of this world, and also very big and very ferocious in order to scare us. And we get to play with directionality as well. The movie plays best in we mix it in 7.1 surround sound, and it plays really well in movie theaters that have surround sound because we actually move the monster and screams and the bangs and the crashes move around us depending upon where Maria, the protagonist, has oriented her head. So we're panning the sound constantly in the film, way more than a typical film. Because in most films, the action is happening on the screen in front of you. But in this film, sometimes it's on the screen in front of you, but more often than not, it's off to the left or off to the right or behind you or etc. So we did a lot of work to kind of use sound to scare you. The tagline for the film is the most terrifying things are the ones we can't see.
I like that. I like that. And by the way, it's really true. You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of true.
And I guess it ties back to my experience as a sound editor. I've learned over the years how powerful our sound work can be because we can manipulate an audience, I would say more than the visuals can without the audience knowing it because they're so visually focused, they're intent on looking at the screen. We can do things in the sound around them to make it seem funnier or make it seem more tense, make it seem more relaxed, make it seem more romantic. We can manipulate their emotions very subtly. And the goal is never for the audience to go, oh, well, that sound told me that that I should be scared. We don't want them to know what we're doing. But because they don't know it, I think it gives us a little bit of extra power in how we manipulate people. So we try to leverage that in this film.
Okay. Uh, Interesting. Um, is there a special kind of responsibility you feel because you have a central character who's blind and and that doesn't come up a lot. So you're telling a story centered, on a blind character, so that carries with it a responsibility.
Yeah, well, I mean, first off was actually casting a low vision actor. Um, that was great because she had thoughts and feedback. And I noticed in her performance, we typically think of someone who's blind as their eyes don't function at all. And one thing I noticed with her is even though her eyes aren't taking in information, they're still giving out information to us because being on her face for 8 minutes the way or 7 minutes the way we are on the film, we still can see through her eyes her fear, her confusion, her panic, all the things that she's going through. So I think that was one of the big responsibilities is make it real, not someone kind of pretending, but someone really, in cinema, the goal of any film, whether it's a comedy, a super silly comedy, or the most dramatic film, is to, in a pretend situation, to still expose truth, real emotional truth through a fictional story. So we have the safety of it knowing that it's fictional to really explore the truth. And so in this case, I wanted to, even though it's a fantastical thing with a giant monster, I still wanted it to be true. Down to and like we took responsibility. The production designer worked really hard. Not that you'll ever notice it. And we don't linger on any of the shots, but at the beginning of the film, we kind of walk through her apartment. The camera just kind of floats through her apartment before we get to her bedroom and her asleep. And part of it was just to kind of set up the space because we're about to constrict your vision and be on her face. But also, if you look very carefully, she has Braille playing cards. She has a white cane with a GPS, voice activated GPS unit so that she can use modern tech to get around. She has her paperwork as a teacher. And since she teaches blind students, we actually looked up and like the way they teach fractions to blind students is with little pieces of foam that they glue to the paper so you can
Wow.
feel 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, whole, 4/4. Like there has to be a tactile way of learning these
Wow.
concepts that when you're really young you wouldn't be able to do. So we have that there. There are no rugs in her apartment because that's something you would trip on. The
Right.
furniture is all against the walls, and all the middle of the rooms are all open space because you can't have a coffee table in the middle of your living room. Um, we didn't have a TV. Now you might have a TV even if you're blind, you might have guests over and you want to let them. But in her case, we were like, why would she have a TV? There's a radio and a stereo. Um, in her bedroom, things are different, and it made it challenging to light because we were also like, she wouldn't have a night light on, right? Or any lights
Yeah.
in her so it's only lit by moonlight. We made sure the set had lots of windows so that we could play, and it's a full moon. We set up that it's a full moon so that we could like motivate the light coming in. So we tried to be very true to what her experience would be and tell her truth, even though it's a fictional
Yeah.
sci-fi horror story.
So you have so much packed in, so much consideration in the production. Every little detail you have to think about. Uh, it's kind of mind-boggling. A short film with, and as I'm listening to you, by the way, I don't know if you see me. I've been writing. I may be one of the only interviewers
Ah,
in
take
American
notes.
history who is taking notes.
That's
Well,
great.
it is great. I take notes, and I've been writing. You got 2 pages so far, so congratulations.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Or I just talk a
Congratulations.
lot.
2 pages. No, it's good. It's good. And as I'm listening to this, but I'm listening. You because it's not my world. As you're describing things with the moonlight. I mean, every little. There's so much to consider. We're not talking about 90-minute feature here. This is compacted. So, it's, my hat's taken off. And the other interesting thing, the whole history of horror, we're always afraid uh, of things that we see coming. And here, it's so different because now it's the element of sound is your key. Um, um, does that uh, uh, does that involve a different kind of psychology or a different kind of suspense? Uh, um,
I mean, all filmmaking is about controlling what the audience sees and hears, which are the two senses that we have in cinema. For a while, they experimented with smell for a little bit. They decided
yeah,
that one wasn't very good.
I remember
Uh,
that.
but we have what you see and what you hear. One of the challenges I've had a lot of people talk to me about, doing, the virtual reality filmmaking, where you have the 360 and you wear the goggles and you're in the scene. And I've always said the problem with that is it's a different art form because the whole point of good films control what you see and what you hear and when you see it and when you hear it. And in a 360 virtual reality world, you have access to everything at the same time. You can look over here, you can look over there, you can look up, you can look down. You hear what's happening behind you, you hear what's happening in front of you. So filmmaking is all about controlling those things. And so one of the things that was great about Blindsided was the concept of the film allowed us to control the visual and be very strict about what you see and what you don't see, even down to when we chose what the depth of field would be in the image and how much is in focus and how quickly the background falls out of focus and how tight or wide we were going to be in our shot. So we were able to control the visuals um, really well, which allows us to choose when to show something and when not to show something. And the same thing with the sound. And that's where I think a lot of filmmakers, putting on my other hat, they fail to effectively control the sound as much as they control the visuals. They'll spend forever on the lighting and where the shadows fall and where the light falls and you know, and production design and things like that. And oftentimes they won't think about what can the sound reveal or hide that will heighten whatever it is, whether it's a comedic moment or a jump scare. You know, horror films again kind of had horror films know that if you have a quiet moment and then you have a really big loud moment on the jump scare, that sudden loud noise will help get the audience to jump. But you can do the same thing in comedy. You can do the same thing in drama. You can do the same thing in a rom-com. It's different, but you can do that in all of them. So there, I'll get off my soapbox now. But that's my
No, don't
pitch
get
for
off the soapbox.
effective use of sound in filmmaking.
Wow. You know, I'm an old movie person, and yes, I've seen Casablanca 200 times. It is what it is. I've seen Casablanca, not well, Casablanca 200 times. You know, The Godfather, I marvel at. But then in third place for me, and watch how I take this and I turn
Hmm.
this into a sound bite. The number three movie that I watch endlessly is From Here to Eternity. It to me it just magnificently captures that period of time. Not that far from Guam, you know, Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, yeah.
It's Pearl Harbor. It's you know, it's June 1941, Schofield Barracks, Sinatra, Burt Lancaster. I mean, what a cat! What a the you know. I guess it was James Jones wrote the book. Just and I'm going to tell you the scene. There's a lot of scenes that resonate with me, and my hand to God, I'm copying some comedian. My hand to God, the scene that just bounces around me is early in the film when uh, Sinatra's cleaning up some stuff, and the character Pruitt uh, comes walking up, and they know each other. And Montgomery Clift is Pruitt, and and um, and he's transferring. Montgomery Clift Pruitt is transferring from one company to another. Sinatra knows him. They talk a little bit, and then and Pruitt said, you know, is the commander is in? He's not here yet. So he goes, opens up this door, and it's beautiful black and white. It's just magnificent black and white. And he walks into this big rec hall with a pool table. There's nobody around. It's empty. And he walks in, and as he walks in, and he's going to shoot some pool, the screen door closes and bounces a couple times, and the sound. It's crazy. But listening to you made me think of it. But the sound of that screen door closing in an empty room resonated with me right up until this moment, my talking to you. So in my world, listening to you as a sound person, that piece of sound, why it resonated with me, because it told me about loneliness, and there's nothing there, and you're able to hear the echoing of that sound. It was so powerful. It aided the imagery for me.
Yeah, yeah, you can do that great. The movie Without Limits, which was the second Steve Prefontaine movie, the one that
Uh-huh.
Robert Altman, not Robert Altman, Robert Town, sorry, directed. That starred Billy Crudup, and they did a lot of great sound work in that film. And when he's doing the race for the Olympic trial, um, to qualify for the Olympics, it's like a montage of him in the race.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And rather than using score, they use the sound of the stopwatch. And what they did was, as it goes on, not only does it get louder, but it actually, as we get towards the end, they sped it up. It's not actually going, one tick every quarter second. It's like one tick every fifth of a second. So it speeds up a little bit, which what that's telling you is the time slipping away, time speeding up. He's trying to get under the, to qualify, he has to run fast at the end and he's pushing, but it's getting faster and faster and he's losing seconds because it's going faster. I don't think any audience member ever was paying attention to the intensity of how loud and how fast that stopwatch was. But it was just a great way of having the audience go, he's in a race against time to make the mark that allows him to qualify for the Olympics. There's other things. There's also a Donald Sutherland voiceover talking through like the race strategy of how he's going to do it. And on every lap, the sound of the old mechanical lap counter with the louvers that would count down the laps, which is now doesn't exist because they're all digital, but
Right.
that of all the louvers,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
every lap, that sound. So there's a rhythm to it that's created from sound effects to help heighten that intensity and drama of a foot race.
Mhm.
Normally, they would just do some big orchestral, the chariot of fire, technique would be, big score.
Yeah. I'm so into what you're saying because of my experience with a screen door closing and
Yeah,
how,
and the same thing, yeah.
yeah,
And
it's so
screen door banging in an empty room, no one
it's
else there.
so powerful. So there are a whole new perspective on sound, and listening to it firsthand. Um, uh, by the way, we haven't briefly touched this, but you've work on shows like 6 Feet Under and Cobra Kai and all that television. Does that sharpen um, your instincts for telling stories?
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Oh, I mean, I get a master class all the time in watching some of the great, creative minds, you know, and what I find is the ones that typically are really good and really successful and, frankly get paid a lot of money to do it are also usually the most collaborative and open and will listen to people's ideas, but then still have the vision to figure out, is that suggestion helping what we're trying to do? Is it hindering what we're trying to do? Or are they catching something and their solution isn't the right solution, but they did catch something that I need to address? And then quickly I do that. So one of the things by working with some of these great people I learned was, there's no criticism that is invalid except this is the way I would have done it. Because, well, go ahead and do it, but you're not making my project. But if someone says, I didn't understand this, or I wanted to know this, or how come this happened, that's all valid because that's their experience. And then it's up to you to decide, is their experience okay for me as the filmmaker? Am I okay if they're left wondering what happened to blah blah blah? If that's not important to the story and they were like, well, whatever happened to so and so? Like, I don't care. So I'm glad you're curious to know who they are, what happened to them, but it's not germane to our story. But sometimes they'll say something and it'll open uh, you know, a hole that you had in your story, something that you didn't know that you didn't know. And then figuring out how to solve that is very important. And oftentimes people will give a suggestion like, I couldn't figure out blah blah blah. So what if they did blah blah blah? Well, that isn't the right solution, but them catching that thing can now lead you down the right path to solve it. When I did my feature film, there was a question about uh, what a character did something and then a different character does something and they're like, that made no sense. Why is that happening? And some people suggested we just cut that little section. And I was like, no, that section is vitally important. And I realized that what happened was they were confused about why the person did something because 20 minutes later we learn something else
mhm.
that kind of explains it, but the audience didn't know it. And so I literally took a whole section of the film, 10 minutes of the film, lifted it, moved it forward, and put it before. And if you watch the film, the wardrobe continuity gets a little wonky because the
Oh,
guy's wearing a red shirt, and then
oh,
in the next scene, which should be the same day, now he's wearing a green shirt.
oh,
But no one paid attention to that. But what they got was now they totally understand why the character does the big moment, why he does what he does, because it's been set up. And I hadn't caught that because I, the writer of the story, knew what was going to happen and what had happened and what he knew and didn't know. But I didn't realize I hadn't shown that clearly to the audience. And so learning things like that, even though I'm the sound editor, and I have to be very careful, I have to keep on my sound hat. Like I can't become screenwriter Patrick when I'm being paid to do the sound work, right? Like there are things that are like this is their project, this is how they want to do it. It's not for me to say I would have written it a different way. But Sound Patrick can offer suggestions on what's there and how to use sound to help carry it. And so learning what they're going for and how I can support them then informs me as a filmmaker on how to do the same thing when the shoes are, reversed.
yeah. Uh, I could, we can go on for hours. We won't, but we can, but we won't because it's not practical. One last to kind of wrap everything up. If cinema obviously is about seeing things, what does it mean to you when a film teaches us, which is what you've done, it teaches us how to listen?
Oh, deep question. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's deep. I
I
apologize for that.
but I think that goes back to what I was saying about the truth. I think when you can watch, I think some of the great films of all time are films where we're entertained and we laugh and we cry and we jump in our seats and we cringe and all that. But then afterwards, we're left with thoughts of, even though we're seeing images and we're hearing things, and it's all pretend most of the time, not always, but most of the time. You know, the thoughts that it raises in our mind are real. And if they can get to those truths, if a film can, I think in some ways Casablanca is one of the greatest films of, male friendship, in history, right?
You're
Like
right.
that's I mean, I don't know, and part of it is, sometimes you don't know.
And that
I think
gets
some
buried, by
film,
the way. That's buried.
yeah.
It's not one of the, it's not one of the
Well,
marquee
back
things.
then, you couldn't have two, macho virile guys who
Yeah,
become like deep, deep friends and share this
yeah,
emotional connection. Even though, that's what's the very end of the film, right?
correct.
um, it kind of gets on the nose at the very end. But I think when you can have those things and hit those truths, you it's kind of what we said about listening, right? When you listen to an idea, right? And that's one of the things about sound is visuals give us so much information, but when we talk about really deep things, we usually say, listen to this, right? We don't say, watch this. We
Yeah,
say, listen to this. There's this, there's this idea that like it goes in the ear and into the brain. And usually they don't usually think about in the eye into the brain. I mean, both do, but there is something about that and the words of film. I mean, cinema really took on to another level with the advent of talkies, right? And adding the dynamic of human speech, people being to talk to each other. It's different. I love foreign films and reading the subtitles so I understand what's going on, but there is a difference between reading the text and hearing a human say it. I love novels. I love reading. It's a totally different experience and great and wonderful. But there is something in the human voice. We're attuned to it. That's, our ears are attuned to that's what horror takes sounds that aren't human speech and throws it behind us and scares us. But when we hear a human voice speaking, we like tune into that because now we know we're here. This is something important that I need to pay attention to do. So that's my way to kind of sum it all up.
great. Hey, borrowing a line from The Godfather, and when Michael Corleone tells Enzo the baker they're standing outside the hospital pretending they have guns in their coat pocket and to discourage these guys from doing another hit on the Don, and they drive away, and Michael looks at Enzo the baker, who's shaking, uh, uh, and says to him, "You did good." So I'm saying to you, you did good.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that we talked about my little sci-fi horror short film, and the
Yeah,
film's reference were From Here to Eternity, Casablanca,
yeah.
Godfather.
Hey, you know what? A film is my life. It's funny in my tortoise. I'm plugging my tortoise book, which I've been compared. I got a great review from Kirkus Store. They compared me to John Irving. The World According to Garp, one of my favorite movies.
That's a pretty good
Yeah,
comparison
it
right
was a
there.
really.
Congrats.
This is a major
Amazing.
book reviewer, but in my book, I pay homage to my love of film. I don't think 5 pages go by when I'm not quoting another movie in my book. There must
Yeah.
be 100 movies quoted because
Well,
movies are
like I
life.
said, because movies are pretend at their heart, we let our guard down. I think when we're with other people sometimes, or even sometimes watching documentaries, you kind of build a little bit of a wall because it's real and you don't want to get too hurt. So you know what I mean? I think a lot of people cried way harder when Old Yella, got put down than anybody in their actual life ever,
Yeah,
when they passed away. You know what I mean? We we
yeah,
we tend
sure,
to let our guard down a bit more
sure,
in the
yeah,
movies, which is why I
yeah,
love it.
yeah. Funny in the movie Shane, one of my favorite Western. There's a couple. I love The Searchers and stuff, but the last scene, little Brandon DeWilder's yelling for Shane to come back. He's hurt and he's taking his horse and he's riding up into the mountains. I mean, the imagery is magnificent, but the sound of his voice as he gets further away and it fades. I'm telling you, it's such a memorable scene, and he's yelling, "Shane, come back!" And
Yeah.
it's fading. The sound is fading. So the sound was done so perfectly, and you just feel that that loneliness and the unknown and all that. I mean, I'm just telling you how sound affected me from that movie and that last scene. Powerful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it
For
is.
me, powerful stuff. So, I'm going to stop recording. Don't leave. We're just going to do a 30-second wrap. But thank you so much for
Hey, thank
this,
you.
and it's been great. Truly, this has been very special for me. And actually, I don't lay any guilt on you because I don't like doing that guilt stuff. But I'll probably take me an extra long time to fall asleep tonight because you filled my head, with stuff, and and,
Uh,
it, and the energy will keep me awake a little bit longer. But I don't mean to lay guilt on you that way. But thank you, thank you, thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you for
Okay,
having me on.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
okay, stay right there.